It's the 24th of August 2025. I'm at Craven Cottage watching Fulham host Manchester United in their opening home match of the new Premier League season. The chants you can hear are coming from the Hammersmith end, which is the end I've had a season ticket in for over 15 years. It's directed at Fulham CEO Alistair McIntosh. McIntosh has spearheaded a pricing strategy for Fulham tickets that has caused unrest amongst the fan base. Last season, Fulham charged some truly eye-watering matchday ticket prices. Against Man United, the most expensive seats, £160 each, and £80 for children. Season ticket prices have also incrementally risen by an average of 8.7% each year since 2022. Fulham fans have long protested rising prices, from marching with Stop the Greed banners in 2019 to holding up yellow cards in 2024. Further protests are expected to come because fans have had enough.
Fulham are in crisis, mate. Our owners, they are killing our football club with these ticket prices.
That is just an obscene amount of money to be charging the football fan.
When you charge inhuman prices.
Fulham should be absolutely embarrassed about that.
I'm Jon Harland, and over the last few years, I've watched how rising ticket prices have pushed fellow supporters away, how people I used to share a pint with on the concourse at half-time have stopped coming to games because they simply can't justify the cost. And this is where my passion for the subject of rising ticket prices began, because it's not just happening at Fulham, the same story is playing out across English football. In this documentary, I'll be examining the key issues around raising Premier League ticket prices. You'll hear my conversation with fans, journalists and football business experts. As owners continue to prioritise profit over heritage, what can be done to achieve change? This is Priced Out, football's ticket crisis.
Okay, we're here today for the Stop Exploiting Loyalty campaign. Supporters up and down the land have been taking this banner into grounds, outside grounds.
On the first weekend of November 2024, Premier League supporters staged widespread protests against rising ticket prices. Across the 10 matches that weekend, 19 of the 20 sets of fans displayed banners, gaining national press coverage and reaching millions of worldwide viewers. A month later, fans from Liverpool, Everton, Man United and Man City came together to stage protests under the campaign. They were uniting to challenge the rising ticket prices that continue to alienate their core fan bases and erode local communities. Behind it all was the Football Supporters Association, also known as the FSA, which is the UK's main representative body for football fans, campaigning to keep the game affordable, accessible and connected to its communities. I spoke to Tom Greatrex, who has been chair of the FSA since July 2024. A long-time Fulham season ticket holder, he was instrumental in pushing for meaningful dialogue between club officials and fans through the Fulham Supporters Trust. To get to the heart of why the FSA launched Stop Exploiting Loyalty, my first question for Tom was simple. How do clubs exploit the loyalty of their fans?
To greater or lesser extent, almost every Premier League club have done a combination of the following. Significant increases in season tickets. This is over the last 2 or 3 years, way beyond inflation. Increases in match day prices, removing concessions, making it harder for fans to, in some cases, to qualify for matchday tickets without putting an additional premium on top of them. All of those things, alongside the frustrations that have been around for a while, like very late movement of fixtures, which, although is primarily related to broadcast, clubs also have a say in. What is it that's being exploited? Well, all of those clubs know that all of their fan bases will be upset about those things, will complain about those things, but they also know that by and large, those fans are the people that go home and away every week, and they will continue to go, and they do, and I do, and lots of other people do, up until the point at which they can't. And I think where we've got to, and why this has become more of an issue in the last couple of years, is that exploitation of loyalty has maybe just in some cases shifted over into a view amongst some people running clubs that supporters are expendable. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if people have been going for 20, 30 years, can't afford to go, can't afford to take their kids, can't afford to go to away games, or are unable to get tickets for home games because somebody else will.
What was your reflection on it, seeing so many fan bases kind of pulling together? Why do you think they felt the need to take that action?
Well, I think, we saw it across a number of different matches where opposing fans of opposing teams came together to demonstrate that these are issues which are affecting supporters as a whole. And, people appreciate and understand unity is strength. And that is absolutely true when you look at what happened in a number of cases this season compared to last season. So coming into this season compared to coming to last season, where some clubs froze their season ticket prices, others had very low increases, others made changes as a result of dialogue with supporters, which not in every case, but in many cases came as a result of them seeing very vocal ongoing protests.
As Tom mentioned, several Premier League clubs froze season ticket prices for the 2025-26 season, 7 to be exact, including Man City, who had some of the most vocal protesters. Next, I'll be exploring how much it costs to be a football fan today to gain a better understanding of why thousands of fans claim they can't afford to go to the football and what's triggered nationwide protests. In the 24-25 Premier League season, 19 of the 20 clubs increased matchday ticket prices by an average rise of 6.7%, bringing the average matchday ticket to just under £60. As for season tickets, 13 clubs increased prices last season, with an average hike of 8%. The average price of the 25-26 Premier League club's most expensive regular admission adult season ticket is £1,216, while the average cost of each club's cheapest adult season ticket is approximately £567. But this is just the price for the fans to get through the turnstiles, not factoring in extra matchday costs. I spoke to Joe Gunning, a Fulham fan whose budget was stretched thin when attending games as a student, and he hasn't been able to go to several matches in the last few seasons due to affordability issues.
If you're taking transport in London, the tube, let's say most people are travelling on the tube from a little way out, that's on just transport costs me about 10. If I want to get 2 pints at the game, our pints are £7.90, so that's now we're at like 26 quid. The ticket for the game itself, as a young person, costs me on average about 80 quid. So now that's 116 quid. I've got to get travel back out. That's 126 quid. If I want to buy like a bit of food at half time, costs me about 9 quid. Now we're up to £135. And that's kind of keeping things at a minimum. The cost that you're spending on kind of one game, one day, is how much, like at uni, I'd spend in about a week just to get by. And that's ridiculous. That's a trade-off that not many people can make.
If your club qualifies for European football and goes deep into domestic cup competitions, the extra ticket and matchday costs mount up throughout the season. Let's look at Aston Villa as an example. For Villa's Champions League campaign in 24-25, most fans paid between £70 and £97 per home game. They reached the quarter-finals for the competition, and for those glorious European away days, Villa fans also had to consider flights and potentially accommodation. They also reached the semi-finals of the FA Cup, with adult tickets costing between £30 and £150. Over the course of the season, these costs add up, and with budgets already strained in the current cost of living crisis, thousands of football supporters across the country simply cannot afford to see the team they love live. With basic expenses like heating bills, rent and groceries becoming increasingly more expensive in the UK, millions of people have to be stingy with how they spend their disposable income. But are football clubs justified in their decision to raise prices? One argument in favour is to do with the Premier League's new domestic TV deal for the 2025-2029 cycle. It's worth £6.7 billion over the 4-year period, which is the largest sports media rights deal ever concluded in the UK. But while the headline figure surpasses the £5 billion deal in the previous cycle, the new deal covers 4 years as opposed to the 3 years of the previous deal, and includes 70 additional matches, meaning clubs will earn less per game. Factor in inflation, broadcast revenue streams are effectively stagnating. Here's the former chief business of football writer for Reach plc, Dave Powell, explaining the implications of the new TV deal to me.
For so long, the Premier League, certainly through the 2010s, had the benefit of a huge TV deal, which pretty much every club that was the highest percentage of their overall revenue was coming from broadcast revenue. Clubs see the iceberg because broadcasters can't continue to pay more and more every single cycle because they just don't have the money. Piracy is an issue which impacts subscriber base. There is probably an iceberg coming whereby broadcast revenue starts. I mean, they're already plateauing. They'll start to decline. That becomes a problem. So clubs are looking at other ways they can now monetize what they have. So you look across the Premier League and, matchday revenue is cash flow really for clubs. So there is a lot of readily available cash that comes from the turnstiles, which allows clubs to cash flow the business. And that's vitally important because you're paying wages every month, so, transfer fees and things like that are paid in tranches, throughout the, over the period of a contract. You actually need money to cash flow a business. So for clubs now, they realize that they are getting left behind if they aren't addressing their matchday revenue capabilities.
Therefore, as Dave argues, while it's frowned upon to charge fans more, it's arguably necessary to make up for this lost revenue from broadcasters that has been relied on for the best part of a decade.
If this was a normal business, you would have raised prices for tickets in line with the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. For example, since May 2014, Consumer Price Index inflation has risen 33%. And that means the costs have increased over time, and the prices haven't followed that trend really. So they're trying to understand why can't we try and now close that gap. The cost of putting on a game now is vastly increased. So I think Liverpool, for example, match day costs and administrative costs gone up kind of 75-80% in recent seasons. And that's money that has to be found from somewhere. And the pressure on clubs is to find it from other ways other than the fans. Kind of clubs are expected to not increase ticket prices. It's always frowned upon. However, no one really seems to take into account that everything else has gone up. So the cost of running a business is infinitely more expensive. It's hard to just rely on commercial revenues to raise things up, which is why clubs are having and will have to over the next 5 years start to pass on some of that cost to the supporters.
To better understand just how expensive it is to run a Premier League club and why they are increasingly leaning on fans for extra revenue, I spoke to Kieran Maguire, a football finance expert, university lecturer, and co-host of the Price of Football podcast. Kieran is widely regarded as one of the UK's leading voices on the business of the game. With operating costs rising year on year, I began by asking him why these costs keep climbing.
Since the Premier League started in 1992, overall inflation for us as consumers has increased by 126%. So prices have doubled and a wee bit more. The Premier League's been absolutely fantastic at bringing money in. In the very first year that it existed, revenue was £205 million. That was up to 6.3 billion by the time we got to 2024. And remember, there's 2 fewer clubs in the Premier League than in the first season. So that represents an increase of 2,996%. Brilliant. That's far ahead of general inflation. But the problem that the Premier League have is that it's absolutely rubbish at controlling costs. So during that same period of time, people would say, well, what are the main costs for a football club? 2 areas, wages and transfer fees. Wages have increased by 4,069% and player purchases 4,520. So as a result, football clubs are now losing money, despite all of the additional revenue that the industry is generating. It's absolutely hopeless at controlling costs. The weekly wage has gone up from £2,000 a week in 1992-93 to, on average, works out as about 95 or so 92,000 a week now. It is incredible numbers.
With matchday revenue becoming more significant, I then asked Kieran just how important this revenue stream is and how much clubs really make from their fans.
When the Premier League started, the majority of the money, the biggest single source of money, was matchday tickets. That has decreased. So it was over 40% when the Premier League started. Now, around about £1 in every 7 overall comes from ticket sales. But you can take clubs, small clubs which we say with smaller capacity stadiums. Bournemouth make less than 4% of their revenue from ticket sales. Burnley will be between 4 and 5. Palace will, there's a lot of clubs that are making perhaps £1 in £1.13, £1.15 from ticket sales. So the importance of ticket sales as a leader as far as clubs revenue is concerned has significantly decreased. At the same time, at the top end of the game, you've got the likes of Manchester United, Spurs and Arsenal generating £130 million a year from ticket sales. And in number terms, that's still very significant.
So when ticket prices incrementally increase, how significant is the extra revenue generated?
But if I use Fulham as a benchmark, Fulham's matchday income went up from £15 million in 22-23 to £18 million in 23-24. So 21% increase, an extra £3 million. What does that buy? The average weekly wage at Fulham's 73 grand a week. So that's what, £3.5 million a year. The increase didn't even pay for the wages of one new player. So that sort of contextualizes those numbers. But the club would say, well, hold on, we still need those 3 million. The club will also say, if we don't sign players, if we don't pay the transfer fees, if we don't pay the going rate, then two things. A, it increases our chances of relegation. Bad news for the finances, bad news is for jobs, bad news all round. Secondly, we'll have fans screaming at us that we lack ambition. So I think there's a paradox in football, is that I think as fans, we want clubs to spend more money, but not our money.
Here's Mark Chapman discussing the issue on the Sports Agents podcast in April 2024.
Ticket revenue is a really small percentage of what clubs bring in compared to their overall revenue, commercial revenue. Spurs will make an extra £2.5 million to £3 million a year from next season with the ticket rises. Arsenal roughly £2 million extra. At the same time, Daniel Levy's pay has gone up from 3.2 million to 3.5 million and a £3 million bonus. I don't understand how you can get a positive message across if you're the Tottenham executive.
I finally asked Kieran what his thoughts were on football being a unique business and whether football clubs have a moral responsibility to keep football affordable for their fans.
Yes, but and the reason why I say that is that football clubs are monopolies. You're a Fulham football fan. If Todd Bowley phones you up and says, John, tell you what, give up your Fulham season ticket, come along and join the merry gang. They're really friendly guys in the shed for the next 5 years. I tell you what I'll do, I'll let you attend for nothing. But the one thing you've got to do, you've got to stop supporting Fulham. What's the likelihood of you saying yes to that?
Slim to none.
Slim to none, and Slim's out of town. So that's what people don't understand, that there is no substitute for your football club. And we've got this glib saying in the football business industry, football's the most important of the unimportant things in life. So I'm prepared to make sacrifices. So I'll go to fewer gigs. I'll have less evenings out. I'll cut back on buying clothes or music or whatever it's going to be. But the one thing I won't cut back on is football. And football clubs know this. And like all monopolies, they do have a broader responsibility towards the people that consume their products. Although I think we are now in an era of owners that don't give a stuff and just want to maximise return and yield.
This ties back to my discussion with Tom Greatrex at the start. Football fans will be loyal to their club for life and will make financial sacrifices to go. The problem is, clubs consistently take advantage of their loyalty. I also spoke to Daniel Storey, chief football writer at the iPaper. Daniel has written extensively on fan culture and fan club relationships in football, including rising ticket prices and their consequences, so I was keen to get his perspective. I put to him some popular justifications for increasing ticket costs, including the fact Premier League games sell out almost every week across the country, regardless of price, and that soaring operating costs, as we explored earlier, arguably mean clubs are having to start to lean on their fans as an extra revenue stream.
Yeah, I mean the supply and demand thing is valid in that, football is a business now, and the business of football is making money as well as winning trophies. It's undeniable. The question is that the point about football is that football fans are, as a customer, are probably the most loyal example of customers we could ever have in functioning society. They are tied to the product. They're tied to their brand of choice, if you like. And I think with that probably comes a corporate social responsibility not to exploit that has been ignored. In terms of the money, like it's a valid argument on a singular level. The problem is that football clubs waste a lot of money on buying players who aren't successes, and it's not the case that that it's not a pursuit of perfection. You don't get everything right, but you are making a choice. It might be different arms of the club. You are effectively making a choice of, if we want to make 3 million a year out of season ticket holders, it's a choice to make. It really is, and Brentford as a club have chosen so far, and there doesn't seem to be any reason to think they'll stop, to go down the route of, we think our fans, we would prefer our fans to stay loyal, we prefer them to stay here, we prefer them to not feel as if we were exploiting them. And if that means that we buy one fewer player and we finish a couple of positions lower, we hope that we have bought from them through our actions. We've bought some extra loyalty so that the club has faith in us.
As Daniel mentioned, Brentford is a Premier League club that does things a little bit differently. For instance, when they noticed fewer under-18s travelling to away games, they acted, launching their Gen 10 scheme in January 2025, capping every away ticket for under-17s at just £10. That ethos extends to season tickets too. Brentford's most expensive adult season ticket is £605, while under-17s pay just £135. To dig into that philosophy, I spoke with the club's marketing service director, Steve Watts, who is behind the award-winning Gen 10 initiative.
What we've done really here over the last 4 or 5 years is use some of those key principles of keeping the fans involved in the game to make sure that we're doing the right thing. If you are looking at fans as purely as customers, and you look at it simply and unemotionally, you might find that a lot of clubs choose to go that path and they say, well, every pound we raise helps us spend more on players, etc., etc. I think the other way that you can look at things, and probably the way that we look at it, is matchday revenue is about 15% of income in the Premier League. If you genuinely, if you think of your football club more as a community, as the reason effectively the club's there in the first place, you need to share your successes on and off the pitch a little bit. And I think we're very lucky in that, because of the efficient nature of the football side, more than efficient by exceptional recruitment and efficiency in that area, it means that we can kind of more, I guess, afford to make the right decisions for our fans. Going back to the 15% is kind of removing concessions or putting prices up 20% or whatever it is. Is that going to pay for 3 extra players? No, it's not. It goes towards it. It's about being run sustainably, and I think there are certain clubs in the league that genuinely try and run sustainably, and I would say we're absolutely one of those.
Steve is optimistic that others might be willing to follow their lead.
Funnily enough, we're probably more likely to make more of an impact on some of the smaller clubs that might look at us and think, actually, that's been a successful model for them. We can replicate that. It might take a bit more time before you stretch that to clubs that have millions of fans, because that is an absolute step change, more than a step change. That is a 180 reversal in terms of their current policy. But yeah, I think we see our job at Brentford as being a role model club. And we've always said we want to be an asset to the Premier League. We want to do things differently. I think our brand is about being a brand for a fan-facing brand. We have over 12 fan working groups. There's not a week goes by where there isn't a group of fans come into the building and are discussing on different matters.
I then caught up with Mike Johnston, a Brentford season ticket holder and host of the Ealing Road podcast, to get his thoughts on what it's like to be a Bees fan.
I think the first thing to say is that Brentford fans are in a unique position in that our owner is actually a fan of the club. In other words, he's not in it for the money. And to see our kind of rise through the leagues, whilst that's been dramatic, other things like ticket prices haven't been, that the increases haven't been dramatic. You would imagine that as you rise through the leagues and as money gets more important and you want to keep on progressing and keep getting better and better, you'd imagine that the season ticket prices and kind of food and drink around the ground and merchandise, all that kind of things, you'd imagine that they'd shoot up. But thankfully, again, as a Brentford fan, you're in a unique position in that we've got alternative revenue streams. So yeah, the relationship with the fans has been fantastic. It's unbelievable that I still get to go to as many Premier League games as I can, and it still be affordable.
So the question is, are those relatively small financial gains really worth the risk, pricing out the very people who give football its atmosphere? One of the main critiques levelled at Premier League clubs is that they're destroying stadium atmospheres through their ticketing strategies. One way they arguably do this is by prioritising individuals who don't necessarily have any affiliation with that club, who are willing to pay a premium over lifelong season ticket holders. These groups are often described as tourists, day trippers, or corporates, but there isn't really a single umbrella term that captures them all, and the language used to describe these fans can be problematic in itself, as Daniel Storey touches on here.
I think and there's a massive broad spectrum there, right? And it's impossible, I get that it's impossible for a club to easily or even possibly differentiate between different types of people that will come to watch one game. You get absolutely avid fans. You hear about fans who have saved up for years and years and years and come from thousands or tens of thousands of miles away to come to a Premier League game, and their experience is absolutely valid and they deserve it to be positive. I think you're right. I think the word tourist fans comes with a kind of pejorative sense of like they don't care as much as us. I don't think that's true, and I don't think it should be the narrative. I think the narrative should be, while welcoming people, there should always be a sense that season ticket holders are the closest physically to the club and probably make the most difference to match day atmosphere and probably have spent more time and money on the club than anybody else, and therefore like care about us all, right? Don't have us in some hierarchy where we feel like we're being pushed out of the main picture.
By prioritising one-off visitors willing to pay sky-high prices to experience the famous Premier League atmosphere, they risk sidelining the very people who create that atmosphere in the first place. Tom Greatrex explains this tricky catch-22.
I think where it gets dangerous is where it tips into, undermining what it is that people go to experience. So at Liverpool, they go because they're Liverpool supporters, but also because they want to experience and hear and see the Kop in full song or, at its most energetic at chasing a game or whatever. But if you undermine the product to the extent that you lose the people that help make the atmosphere, then it's also less attractive for the people who want to come and experience the atmosphere. And before you know it, you've got a less attractive product to try and sell.
For clubs with smaller fan bases, chasing wealthy one-off visitors comes with a serious risk. If you price out your loyal supporters, what happens when results dip, or in worst case scenario, you're relegated? Daniel Storey, who supports Nottingham Forest, explains the dangers of hollowing out that support.
I've been to watch Forest in League One where there was like 13,000 people in the stadium, a 30,000 seater stadium. Now, the improvement over the last decade or so has changed that, and it's completely reinvented the move, and they're now looking to expand the stadium. But you have to appreciate when times are good. They all have 5-year plans for good times. No, they never seem to have a 5-year plan for bad times and like a worst case scenario. And you have to do that with supporters because you cannot, I don't think anymore with the prices that are at every club, I don't think you can take for granted that they're going to go. It's not just about, as I say, it's not that they don't necessarily want to go. It's that you have to make choices between, taking your partner out for a meal on their birthday or buying them a Christmas present or buying your family Christmas presents and going to games and Boxing Day between Christmas and New Year. Like that is a choice people are making, and it's kind of unacceptable they're having to. I think it's where the capitalisation of football has got to, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and fight it.
When COVID-19 forced stadiums to close, empty stands made even the biggest matches feel flat and even sterile. Match-going fans bring the noise, the rivalries, the theatre, and drive narratives. Going to a game isn't just about watching the football. It's part of people's routines, a chance to connect with friends, family and fellow supporters. Treat fans fairly and you protect not only the atmosphere but the game itself. Football fans aren't unreasonable in their demands, they simply want the game to remain affordable. As owners become greedier, protests will grow louder, demonstrations larger, and the disruption harder for them to ignore.